Welcome back and/or to the channel. Trucker Rod here with S.E.E. And today we are in ISOM, Kentucky, which is between Whitesburg and Hazard, Kentucky, at a double quick truck stop, little truck stop. My customer closed early today, so I couldn't get up to Manchester, Kentucky. So anyhow, I'd like to welcome and say thank you to the new subscribers and comments out there. So we are just trying to be a good, cordial channel to just talk about, like I said at the very first video I put out on March 19th of 2023 was we just want to talk about financial, economics, entrepreneurship, tax advantages of having LLCs and stuff like that. So anyhow, I keep the politics out of it. But today, want to talk about story time. And we've talked about some of the trucks I've driven and all that, but some of the things I've done with those trucks that has led me to more than just delivering to customers a dry van and stuff like that. So as you know, I started back in the late 80s. I started with multiple axle. In Michigan, we call them Michigan Specials. We're allowed to run up to 8 axles at a gross per axle. If all the axles are in line together, 13,000 pounds. Whereas with a tandem trailer, as I'm pulling today, it's 17,000. So 17,000 per axle, 34,000 on the tandems. Then it's 13,000 for every axle that's in front of each axle. Unless you put a 9-foot spread, then it jumps up to 18,000, depending on tire size. That went the same for the steer tires. I could have a 20,000 pound front axle, but it all depended on the tire size. So mainly we ran the big jumbo tires on the front, the 385s, and we ran 20,000. So usually we'd run 6 or 7. Usually if we ran a 6-axle trailer, we'd have 4 on the quad, 2 9-foot spreads, or 7 axles in a row, and the 8th axle would be on a 9-foot spread to give that extra in between, because that axle would set between the drives on the tractor and just behind the dolly of the trailer, just to give you that little bit more advantage up there. So it all depended on what you're doing with the trailer and such. So I hauled with the walk-in floors. I hauled trash. I hauled wood chips and landscape mulch, hardwood bark, colored mulch. So in an array of different applications. But basically the trailers are the trailers. A lot of those trailers, they would have slats in the floor. They were live bottom floor trailers. And when I say walk-in floor, every third slat would slide back, and then they would all sync up together, and then the whole floor would walk out about 18, I'd say 12 to 18 inches. And then it would just keep doing that. But it was running on a wet kit or hydraulic system running off the tractor, and you know, PTO pump and all that, and it would just sit there and run. It'd take about 20 minutes depending on how fast the floor worked on, according to the manufacturer of the the walk-in floor trailer setup. So if the trailer was 45, 48 foot, it'd be quicker. 48, 50 foot trailer could be a little longer. And you know, like I said, it just all depend. And then of course you had to get in there and sweep from the front to the back, sweep the floor, because usually you had debris still on the bottom. But I did a lot of that, many years of that. I did a lot of roll-off truck with a pup trailer, and then I ran a roll-off trailer hooked to the tractor where it'd have 4 to 6 axles on that. Did much of that. And then of course Michigan Special gravel trains. And back then we didn't have all these fancy trucks. Back then we had the old butterfly hood. We had like I said, my truck was pretty advanced with the Superliner then, the hooded truck, the red Mac. But many different applications, whether you know, if it was Fruoff, Mack, East, there was different manufacturers that made the gravel trains. So usually the front one would be 30-35 yards depending on how big, and then the back one was around 25 yards. But you know, everything was always weight. But the tractors back then, you know, the big boy motors were either usually the Caterpillar engines, 4 1/4. The 3406Bs were the engines that I was driving back then. The 400 Cummins big cam 4s, I think that's what it was. I was never a big Cummins fan on heavy haul because their engines, Caterpillar had heavier cranks, heavier rods, more torque, by far more than the Cummins. If you had a Detroit, boy, were you dealing with the screaming demon. That thing was just loud, obnoxious, because the engines weren't a high torque engine back then. Like I believe the 4 1/4 Cat that I had back then was 1550 torque. But you remember, that's putting down a lot more to the ground than what you're getting today, because we didn't have, it was pretty much off the turbo. It was pretty much straight pipe out the tailpipe. There was no emissions, no EGRs, nothing. It was just a straight up air fuel in, air fuel out. So no emissions. The trucks were pretty heavy back then because the bodies were aluminum or steel. They were not all this plastic stuff that we're dealing with today. So your payload was, I'm sure, changed up. If you had a steel bodied gravel train, you know, it just depend on what you're doing with them. A lot of us would run the steel frame rails with the aluminum shined up bodies on it, dump bodies, end dumps. So did a lot of that. I did over the road dry van hauling for Chrysler from Texas to Ontario and Montreal, in all points in between. A little bit towards the Carolinas. Never got to the West Coast, Pacific Northwest, because I was just hauling for Chrysler. A lot of it was coming out of Michigan, Toronto area, and usually going back out to Fenton, Missouri. Back then was the truck plant for the 2nd gen Dodge pickups was out in Fenton, Missouri then. So usually that was a stop, and once in a while I'd bleed out towards the other side of Missouri. Like I said, either aftermarket parts or sometimes a backhaul. So anyhow, later on I got into not only what I'm doing here, but I did haul reefer and produce, and that led me to some interesting travels from down to the northern part of the Keys of Florida, Texas, all the southern states, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. But was interesting, and let's not leave out New York City, Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens. I got once up outside of New York City. Had to do it during the night. I'll tell you that that was probably the most stressful, next to trying to get across Colorado in a snowstorm. But was never a big fan of going out on the East Coast. They knew after about 4 weeks of that, I was ready to head out to Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, get out in the Great Plains. More truck friendly. East Coast, New England states, not truck friendly. I just remember coming down like Bangor, Portland, Maine, and then when I'd come down through Massachusetts, Boston, and going under the city of Boston by the Garden there, and taking the tunnels under the city to come out the other end and delivering out towards Braintree, a suburb of Boston, you know, down to Connecticut, New York, Jersey. Yay. Like I said, I was never a fan, and I never look forward to going back. You'd have to pay me a hefty some change there to coin to get me out there. But what I found interesting in the produce is delivering underground in the caverns. Quincy, Illinois, and another one outside of Joplin, Missouri. And that was very interesting. The first time they had to come up and get me, because I'm like, where do I enter at? And here was this sliver going down in the ground, and you know, just it went down and through this gate, and I just like, it looked restricted, but they're like, no, just come through it. Once I got down there, there was signs up on the as you'll see in the pictures. Everything I'm putting up here, I'll have some photos to go with it. But they go down, and you had to watch the street signs and all that, and they walked me through it. The one out in Joplin, they gave me a map, told me, you know, go through here, but don't come in this hole, go in that hole, because that's the exit, this is the entrance. And I remember I was running behind down there, even though I was on time delivering, but they were taking their sweet time unloading. So I had to walk a half a mile come up out of ground, up towards the gatehouse to get cell reception to call and let them know I was still, you know, behind, and I knew they were trying to communicate with me, because once you're underground, you go off grid as far as your truck GPS, where if they're watching you and all that, that's off the mark. Your cell phone's off. But I was able to take some pictures. That would be the Quincy, Illinois caverns I was in. I believe it was too busy to be walking around in Joplin, because that Quincy, those pictures were on a Sunday morning. So the one thing about produce, if you're gonna make a delivery at 12 o'clock, 12 a.m., 1 a.m., Sunday morning or late Saturday night, people are there. Just remember that food has an expiration date, so when it comes off the processing or packaging line, it's got to get in staging, get on that trailer, you got to go. Delivery saw no, you know, off on Saturday and Sunday. I was delivering on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, which led me to December, I want to say the end of December, the last week, so between Christmas Eve and New Year's Day of 2019, I ran Texas that week. Actually, I was out there for 2 weeks, because I took a 34 out there. I made deliveries there in Quincy. I went to Springfield. Actually, I had to drive right by Prime Trucking. Went to Springfield and delivered. Little Rock, Arkansas, that was all like Saturday, Sunday morning. And then I got out, I know I stopped at, there's a truck stop out there by Texarkana, Dukes, really nice truck stop. I had taken my wife through there once, but I got down to Cochran, Texas, outside of Houston. Remember, there was a pilot somewhere around there, and I remember that week it was pretty much slow on the roads, but it was like 72 degrees. This was yeah, in the winter time in Michigan, but I was just enjoying my time out there. So I want to say I've got a video of that. I'll have to look, go back in the archives and look for that. I remember taking a video of all that jazz. So if I can't get it bled on here, I'll put a link to it down below. And that was in Fort Worth. So I had some good times. I just I didn't mind reefer. I just didn't care when they would just, like, 80-90% of the time I was East Coast, and I hated it. Going up to the docks in Baltimore to pick up fruit and bring it back, or actually go right outside Atlantic City there in Jersey, and you'd be surprised how many what the heck did I bring back? Raspberry, blueberry farms out there, bringing that back too to the Midwest. So blueberries was a mess. And I got back to the yard, and they're like, I know what you hauled. And they said, before you go home, clean that trailer. I literally took me over an hour. I had to take a shovel the trailer out, and wash it out there, because they had a washout bay there on the grounds at the factory, or the produce plant, production plant. And yeah, that was like all over my shoes. So that was a hot mess, because those blueberries just trickle out everywhere, especially when you're moving along and you'd think they'd seal them up better. But yeah, the caverns was pretty interesting, very cool, and they didn't have to use much electricity down there, though they had loading docks and they had coolers in there. When I went in to get paperwork signed, you'd be surprised how much of a deep freeze they can get being underground like that, even more when you need to be frozen foods in that. So no, that was pretty cool. I got to stop by 4 States Trucking in Joplin quite a few times, where they had the Chrome Shop Mafia and Trick My Truck from the early 2000s. Got to see Brian there. So that was a cool place to pop into. Like I said, it's just all cool stuff out there, and really enjoyed myself. But as far as back in earlier in this video, the wood chip hauling, if I didn't use the walk-in floor, a lot of the power plants I'd go to had tilt ramps. Basically, you'd park the whole, just back up on this loading ramp, and you went into a gate shack. No one did it for you. We had to do it ourselves, because you had to chain the truck down and all that on the ramp. And then of course the ramp would just go up with your truck up in the air. So anything in the cab, make sure you got it secured down. And it was always pretty good to, when you got off the ramp, go up and check your fluids, make sure engine oil, coolant, and all that was good. You didn't have any diesel leaks, so you had to make sure all your fuel tank caps were tight and all that jazz before you tilt it in the air. So yeah, I did that. So like I said, I've done a lot of stuff all over Michigan, doing a lot of Michigan heavy haul special, and that was some good times. Though I want to say back by the late 90s into 2000, we didn't have regulations as we do now. There was no electronics in the truck, none of that jazz. Cell phones were just coming on the scene by 99 into 2000. So with that, we were running, summertime Michigan, because we ran season, you had seasonal there, and during the summer months, it wasn't uncommon to work 100 hours a week or more. So people think that's unrealistic. You know what? We did it. I lived it. I know it. So if you don't want to believe it, then I don't know what to say. Go sit in your safe space and enjoy yourself. But I've been there and done that, and we're going to talk about a video subject coming up is skill sets and what you should have going forward, so it makes you a more well-rounded person for a downturn of this economy that is now hitting us. So whether you want to accept that or not, our economy's crashing, and the other countries around us are rising up economically, manufacturing, stuff like that. They're running strong, and we are not. So we're going to talk on that in the next one. But for now, that was story time. Things I did besides just hold the steering wheel and shift the gears. You had to get out and do a lot. And with the wood chip hauling too, other thing too is we had more bark grinder, and we had 950 cats, D5 dozer, we had 320 and 690 John Deere excavators. So when we're doing land clearing, you are required to load your own trailer. So as you can see there in the pic, I was loading my own wagon and then heading down to the power plant to get tipped up in the air. So that's CAD equipment, operating, working on stuff, driving. Like I said, it was just more than steering wheel holding. So I just want to elaborate that to you folks. That's my story time. So there was a lot more moving parts than just having a CDL and driving a truck. You had to get out and you had to do a lot of work, because those trailers and the roll-off had to get out. High winds, rain, snow, you had to tarp your trailer. So as you could see, those open tops, you had to roll your tarp over, strap them down, and get down. Then you had to untarp and get unloaded. So whatever I had, whether it was gravel trains, walking floor trailers, or roll-off containers, yeah, tarping process. Yeah, we always didn't have automatic tarpers. There was a lot of roll-off containers. You hand tarped and you bungeed down. So was nothing to scale a 40 and 50 yard container at times, you know, in the cold, the rain, frozen tarps in the winter. So just got to take you back in time to know, did a lot of work besides just truck driving. So I appreciate y'all being here, listening to this. Look forward to speaking with all of you soon. Remember to continue educating yourself, get your mindset into obtaining more knowledge, be safe out there. It's getting crazier and crazier day by day, and we'll be speaking to y'all, all of you, very, very soon.